Hello and welcome to Taskmaster Talks with Kevin Sullivan. I am your co-host, JP John Paz from the Two-Man Power Trip. And of course, I'm joined by the star of the show, the former WCW and ECW World Tag Team Champion, the former NWA Florida World Heavyweight Champion. He's one of the greatest minds and bookers ever in the history of professional wrestling, the man behind the success of WCW and the NWO. He is the Taskmaster, the Games Master, the devil himself, Mr. Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, how you doing today, sir?
Great, JP. How are you doing, my friend?
Very good. Can't complain. We're starting to get some nice weather finally. I'm loving this.
Yeah, we got great weather right now. It's people don't realize. I'm probably almost as far west as you can be in the United States, and our hottest part of the day is like 5 o'clock. So we're just starting to get warm at noon out here now. So the sun's out. We're going to be about 73 today, 74, but later on in the day, we'll hit our high, probably 76. So it's beautiful.
Nice. That's perfect weather. I love the like. I could wear like a thin sweatshirt and shorts. That's my perfect weather.
Me too.
Now, as far as what's going on with this, seems like they're kicking on all cylinders. They seem to be doing really well, and obviously, you're at the helm, helping out booking.
Well, I'm helping out. In fact, this Saturday, the 24th, on Fight TV, the first time they've had a pay-per-view, and it's at Southern Junction, and that's in Irving, Texas, where, as we know, the Rangers play. And there's a meet and greet. It starts at 3:30 to 5:30.
And the Blood Hunter will be there.
Yes, he will. Boy, is he crazy, huh? You see him riding the bull at the bull?
Yes. Crazy.
I would never do that. Would you?
Nah, no interest.
No interest in getting on a mad ton bull. You know what I mean?
First of all, you could fall off and break your neck. Second of all, your hands just get absolutely destroyed trying to grip.
Yeah. I remember years ago, I saw a video. It was a movie clip, and it was one of the guys that was the champion and went over his injuries. It looked like he had jumped out of a plane with no parachute. You know what I mean?
Oh,
God, the bumps and bruises those people take.
Crazy. Got to be pretty tough to handle that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So today's episode wanted to talk about one of the greatest tag teams ever in the history of wrestling, 10-time WWE World Tag Team Champions, WWE Hall of Famers, Stevie Ray, Booker T, the Harlem Heat. When was the first time you laid your eyes on those two big boys?
I think it was the second time I came back. I know it was the second time I came back. And I thought, wow. I mean, they had it all from the very beginning, and I tell you what, I don't think Stevie Ray gets his due. Booker T, hybrid wrestling, that high flying and quickness, but Stevie Ray was the bull of the woods back in those days. And they could get you in the ring with Stevie's strength or Booker T's flying. It was a great combination. They looked terrific. And then when Sister Sherry was with them, it was a fantastic team. Look at what they went on to do.
And just what a legendary team. Now, when you first see them, who actually brought them into WCW? Was that some sort of like Sid thing where Sid recommended them? Because they always kind of have that story out there where maybe Sid was kind of really behind getting them into WCW.
I heard that too, and I think Sid did have something to do with that. That was, like I said, before I was back for the second time. But yeah, I think Sid had something to do with it, and a good call on Sid's part.
And obviously Bischoff has to sign them, so he must have saw something in them where he was like, "Man, these guys can make some money for us."
Right. I mean,
Still there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you cut out for. Yep, said it cut out just for a second. But with them, Booker T and Stevie, Man, like, I see dollar signs and I see money in them, but when they first came in and they were the Ebony Experience or, they were like the global guys from Houston, who wants to make them Harlem Heat? Who wants to change that up?
I think that might have been Dusty. I think that might have been Dusty to give him a little street cred. You got to realize wrestling was a racist business for a long, long time. I was on the first card in Atlanta where a black man was actually in the ring with a white man. Think about that.
Yeah, crazy.
So, I mean, you look back at the stuff we did in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even before my time, right? Stereotype were horrible. You know what I mean? And we did, whether it was Hispanic or black or even a lesser degree Italian, Irish, Polish power. You know what I mean? It was like they were trying to appeal to a whole group of people where I think ethnicity has been lost quite a bit because in the major cities where I lived in South Boston. So I was born in South Boston and moved. But even when we moved, it was all predominantly all Irish neighborhood. East Boston was all Italian. You know what I mean? Uh, Brockton and Fall River, Portuguese people migrated to where their people were. And then that's sort of broken up over the last 20 years or so, last 25 years. And it's a long time, and it's a good thing it has.
With them, because it's interesting, because I was talking to Scott Casey a while ago about it, and he was saying, like, almost have to get used to when they were first getting into the business, get used to the racism of the fans and how that they're gonna react and how they're gonna treat them. So, I mean, that's gotta be like a little bit of a shell shock.
Oh, it certainly was. I remember I wrestled in Dothan, Alabama, and I don't know if he was the first black guy ever in there. I don't believe so. But his name was Prince Pullens. And I remember in Dothan, they wrestled at a rodeo arena and lightly whitewashed over the drinking fountains and bathrooms that said colored only. I mean, you know, I don't want to get onto a social reform thing here, but you know, they had those guys coming in, especially in the deep South. They had a hard way to go, and I got to give them all the credit in the world. I remember when I was a kid, I'm looking at wrestling magazines. They had a colored world heavyweight champion. Huh? You know what I mean? They just induct uh, someone into the Hall of Fame. I'm trying to remember her name. She was a Sandy Parker. She was the colored woman's champion.
I think they actually inducted Ethel Johnson, but they played a video, I think, that was Sandy Parker.
Oh,
They
okay.
screwed it up, yeah.
But they said the colored world's ladies champion, right?
Yeah, yes.
Huh? You know what I mean? So they had a hard way to go, and they've done very well for themselves, and I couldn't be prouder of them.
It's so when they came up in, Putski's, WWA, then they were in Global with GWF, obviously, did very, very well there, and they're growing. Then all of a sudden, they get moved to WCW. They become Kane and Cole, which is interesting. Do you even know who was it be Dusty would be giving them new names and calling them Kane and Cole?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. Do you know why? To me,
No, mm-mm.
the name Cain.
Brother, evil brother, Cain and Abel?
Yeah, but the Mormons didn't allow blacks until BYU was boycotted. Right back when Steve Young played for them,
Hmm.
that was the mark of the blacks carried the mark of Cain. So I don't. Sometimes I don't think people know history at any length. I'm sure it wasn't done intentionally, but that was not the name. I don't think
Right.
especially when it was spelled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With with them coming in, it's interesting. At Fall Brawl 93, they get a big push and they're kind of put into the main event pretty soon. You just look at them, right? And you just like,
yeah.
these guys are somebody. They have something. They have this charisma. Is that why the immediate push, or did they really like them, behind the scenes and think they're ready for the main event? Because it's the big War Games match. It's Sting, Dustin, Davy Boy, and Shockmaster against Vader, Sid, and the Harlem Heat. So pretty big main event for them.
Yeah, I came in right after that Shockmaster incident. Uh, those guys had the it factor. You've heard people say, "Why didn't this guy go any further?" And I've heard other podcasters say, "Well, they didn't have the it factor." Like you said, they walked into a room, there was somebody, and they listened. They were intimidating physically, but easy to get along with and smart. Very smart.
What do you think is like the difference between them? Because Stevie seems much more serious, much more mature. Booker obviously is the younger brother, but seems much more like jokey, but he's more athletic, but he's kind of more, I don't know, he's more open, it seems. Stevie seems sometimes a little guarded.
I think that's what it is. The older brother. I'm the youngest of three boys, and both my older brothers are more guarded. I think the youngest one gets more of the attention at the end and gets away with a lot more. You know what I mean? He may take a serious beating from the older brothers during his run as a kid, but yeah, there is a different personalities, which doesn't mean one's better than the personality is better than the other. They both have done tremendous for themselves.
Do you think that Stevie and Booker always had a great relationship, always got along well? Or you think that Stevie was kind of, the older brother who's bringing the younger brother along?
I think they always had each other's backs. They had it when they broke into the business back then. It was imperative that they had each other's backs. And I don't think there was any animosity except sibling and rivalry somewhat, but they really took care of one another.
What did you think of them when you first met him? Like, did you like him immediately?
Great guys, great guys, great guys. Laughable. They were funny. I could make Stevie laugh, and I could make him crack up. And it was like that was. I would go out intentionally and try to make him laugh, and he said, "Get away, man, get away." So yeah,
With
I
With them though, like, are they very jokey, or are they kind of like, "Oh, we're rookies here. Let's not, make any waves."
well, they were smart enough to know who had no jealousy towards their ability, because if you're a smart wrestler, you know you want good talent before you and after you, so you draw more money. And they were smart enough when they broke in to be very respectful, but still they were strong enough personality wise and physically not to get pushed around. And were you going to jump, we'll say hypothetically, were you going to jump on Booker? Because Stevie Ray was going to jump on you if you jumped on Booker. And you weren't so sure about your partner. He didn't have the same blood running through his veins. So they came along at the right time. I don't think they get the credit of how much they sped along the racial lines being broken down as quick as they were.
Eventually, they get paired up with Sister Sherry Martel. They go back to being Booker T and Stevie Ray. Whose idea was it to book them with Sherry?
At that time, I think that was Rick's. I think that was Rick's. In fact, I'm almost 100% sure it was Rick's. It was a great pairing. Sherry was incredible. I mean, incredible. And just the contrast. And again, it's another wall broken down. You know, Sherry coming out with these guys. We get in some places in the United States, we get tremendous heat. Uh, but as I said before, I think they were the forerunners of breaking racial barriers down.
The Harlem Heat and Sherry on paper, it's like, oh, that's an interesting thing. Like, what are they going to do? Then they turn into Sister Sherry. Just on paper, originally, it's like, wow, this idea might not work. But then you put them together, and they're a great trio.
Yes, 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 because Sherry knew how to strengthen anybody who she was with and diminish their weaknesses. And, you know, she was such a cheerleader on the outside. If something was going in, she was so smart. And as they were learning, like we all do, and hopefully guys that are wrestling today, you never stop learning. She would, if there was a bot spot, and not saying that the boys did it, it might have been the other tag team. She would do something on the floor or jump up or cause a commotion where that spot wasn't picked up. She was a good camouflage.
Do you think she had any problem going from a main event feud and being Ric Flair's manager to then going kind of quote unquote down to the tag team division and being with Harlem Heat?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Sherry enjoyed the wrestling business just about the most I've ever seen. I put her up there with Ric Flair, how he enjoys the wrestling business.
When they first win the tag team titles near the end of 1994, they beat Stars and Stripes, Marcus Alexander Bagwell, and the Patriot. Is that basically saying, okay, you're part of the booking team at this point? We have a lot of confidence in these guys. They should be tag champs. They can carry the division.
Yeah, they looked the part for sure. You know, they looked the part, it clicked, and they deserved it. You know, I've said this to you before. Sometimes you gotta give people what they deserve. You can't keep holding people back. And, you know, I was a proponent of theirs forever. And when Sherry went with them, it was such a good pairing. It absolutely helped them. And I think at the time it elevated their stature as a tag team. It gave them something that nobody else at that time. Can you name a black tag team that had a white valet, a manager?
Hmm. Maybe Doom for a small period of time with Woman, but that
Yeah,
didn't last, at that long.
right. But other than that,
Right. Yeah. Nobody I can think of. Yep.
yeah. So it separated them from the pack.
With Harlem Heat, Stevie Ray tells a great story about how they're kind of, in 94, they're kind of there. Hogan's obviously there. And that Hogan was the one that said that they should be pushed and that Flair and you guys need to pay more attention. I was surprised to hear that from Stevie because I didn't really know that story or know anything of it. Was Hogan the one that was kind of like, I like these guys, you meant start using them? Or is that not really as accurate as maybe portrayed?
I think it's accurate. I mean, one thing about Hogan, he knows talent. I mean, look when Hogan drew the most money when he first came in the NWO, right?
Yep.
What was surrounded around him? Some of the greatest talent ever in the history of the business.
Yeah.
He knew you can't do it on your own, where a lot of people don't realize that. Anybody that's really succeeded knows that. Look at Dusty Rhodes with his run as a booker. He had great talent around him. This is a talent driven business. And back then, you know, I guess we're in a different era, but back then everybody brought some spice to the pie that was different. And with those guys, I could see how Hogan would say, how could you not see it? They looked so good. They had the it factor and they had great matches every night where it took the pressure off of where Hogan could get, they could have the crowd be red hot for Hogan to come out. And all he had to do was sell when he was a babyface and hulk up and look to the people and, you know, put his ear up, hands to his cup his ear, and he was off to the races. So I can see Hogan doing that for sure.
With Harlem Heat, that's quite the, bump up, like the greatest wrestler of all time, and obviously Flair would liked him, as well, but Hogan saying this, I mean, that's kinda going to bat and really getting them, getting them over behind the scenes, as well as them getting themselves over in front of the camera.
Yeah, and they rightfully deserved it. I don't think he would have done it if they didn't weren't going to draw money for him. You
Yep.
know, so it wasn't that it was a love affair. It was a great business decision on Hulk's part.
How was the Harlem Heat backstage as they're kinda coming along? Anything different change with them?
Nothing. They were the same guys that started as when the last time I saw them. Same guys. They're terrific. Terrific.
With them and the tag division, obviously 10 times as tag team champions, were they almost like the Ric Flair was? Like when he's the NWA champion, the belt is gonna come back to them. You're gonna give a guy a certain run for a little bit, but the belt, like Ronnie Garvin gets the belt for a little bit, the belt goes back to Flair. Steamboat gets a belt for a little bit, goes back to Flair. Dusty gets a belt for a little bit, goes back. Are they almost like the Harlem Heat or like the Ric Flair of the tag division?
I think you hit it on the nose. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they were the perfect ones to have it because they were brothers too, you know what I mean? And then later on, the Steiner brothers and them. I
Yep.
mean, there was a lot of things you could do with these guys. And if you took the belts off them for a while, you could put them with Public Enemy and have wild matches with them. So they were great at every position they were in, you know. But I always liked them as champions.
Man, I remember when the Public Enemy shocked the world and they beat them for the tag titles in that big upset. That crowd went nuts because this Harlem Heat. Wow, they lost to Public Enemy. I mean, it was shocking, but it shows you how good Harlem Heat is because the reaction was awesome for it.
Right, right. And that was like another kind of trying to grasp the ECW crowd where, hey, we're not going to crap on ECW talent because they joined WCW. And those guys at the time, Harlem Heat, could have buckled down and said, well, let's talk about this. There was never a question what they were going to do. They were very, now don't misunderstand me that they were going to do anything that you were asked. They would ask questions where you were going, but you better have an intellectual retort to these guys because they're very smart guys, and rightfully so. They knew their position and what they were worth on the card, and you better have a good answer when they ask you where are we going from here.
They beat the Public Enemy, like we said, Stars and Stripes for the tag titles. The American Males. There's a bunch of, I feel like, upsets and little things here and there that pop up, but Harlem Heat are usually the constant, right? In the tag division, you have that pillar, that constant. That's them. That's the Harlem Heat.
Right, right, right. And there was another thing that nobody thinks about. We were just starting to put out toys. And remember the guys that had the belts, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yep.
Harlem Heat had the belts. You always kind of wanted to go back to that, especially if you made a deal with a toy company that put belts on these particular characters. And they
Yep.
were penciled in for the long run. They were they were the Ric Flair, and that's a high compliment. They were Ric Flair. They were the Ric Flairs of the tag team division.
When you're booking guys like the Harlem Heat, like you said, are you making sure that they're clued into what you're booking? Like, we always talk about Raven, how he kind of would say stuff to you, or Pillman would be like, "Oh, I want to do this, go this way." Are they those kind of guys where they're like booking with you and collaborating, or no?
No, they everybody has a different attitude towards you. Some guys want to be close and know everything. And I find that most guys like that can be insecure and very protective of themselves. Guys like Harlem Heat who knew how talented they were, they'd ask, well, like I said, where are we going after this or whatever? What do you want to do? Okay, yeah, that sounds good. They weren't, can we have 20 minutes and let's go over a month worth of things? No, it wasn't that. They were very smart guys, business wise, too. That's what I'm getting at.
Yep. With them and like feuds and stuff, when you pair them up with like the Nasty Boys, which is a big feud, and they would trade the tag titles, but also have a big time feud. That's something where, as a booker, you're like, "Oh, this is going to be great." This is like these two tough guys from Allentown, PA. They just stiff as hell against these two tough Texas boys that won't take their shit. I mean, was that just a thing in your mind? Like, this is going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, the pairing of those guys is perfect, right? Like you said, we got two barroom brawler truck drivers against these two well conditioned athletes from Texas. You know what I mean? It just worked out perfectly. And that's what I'm saying. The Harlem Heat could have a match against Bagwell and Riggs and steal the show. And they could do it with the Nasty Boys and steal the show. Two completely different matches. And that's hard to do.
Adaptable, right? I mean, they're adapting to
Yeah.
each tag team.
And again, we've said this before. I don't think they get the credit they deserve. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing them up. They were one of my favorite people I've ever been around.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Why is that?
Their attitude, they're all business, they're all professional, and they understood the business at a very young age. And I don't know how they did.
Very mature.
Yes.
With them against the Nasty Boys, it always seemed like they had great chemistry. And it's odd because sometimes you throw guys together and you're like, that isn't going to be a good match. Like, wow, they had great chemistry together. Seemed like more often than not, they would have a great match with the Nasties.
Yeah, yeah. And they brought the best out of the Nasties, I think. They made the Nasties work harder. Don't you think?
Yes,
They
definitely.
made the Nasty Boys dig in. They couldn't bulldoze people around. I
Did
used
the
to say
Hart?
about Knobs and Sags, they were the best good cop, bad cop team I've ever seen.
How so?
Well, when they come in, Knobs would be the bad cop, Sags would be the good cop, and I used to tell him, "Get the hell out of here, Jerry. You're a great good cop," and they'd start laughing to me because they knew what I was saying. That it was happening in Costello doing Who's on First. I've seen the routine before, guys.
I
Who?
love it.
Who? The guy
You
on
gotta love those
first.
guys.
Who? That's what I said. Who's on first? That's what they were, but they're great.
With the Heat, also the Steiner brothers was maybe arguably their best feud, and that feud went on for years, and they always had great matches. Two brother teams, two dominant teams, two dominant force in WCW. When you say greatest WCW tag teams, people either say Harlem Heat or the Steiner brothers, right?
Yeah, and you can't go wrong with either or, but I think you have to go with the Heat because they were together longer, where later Rick and Scott split up.
With
Longevity means something, I think.
with that longevity, do you think that they should have been broken up sooner, or you think that they did have the perfect length as a team?
I think they had the perfect length as a team.
With the Harlem Heat also, it's one of those things where it's like you kinda seeing Booker T is the standout. Am I crazy, or is everyone seeing that backstage too? Like, wow, this guy, I mean, Stevie is great, but it's like, wow, this guy Booker T, he's got something extra. He's got that extra gear. I think we could do some more stuff. You guys start to notice that early on with the Harlem Heat?
What I think now, when I look back at it, Booker started to morph into the new style of wrestling, like the hybrid of Japanese, Mexican, European, where Stevie Ray was still the big bull of the woods, the hard nosed, great match guy that you're going to have, but he's going to be dead ass serious, where Booker would pull something out where you go, wow, like the scissors kick and the what's that move called after the scissors kick where he spins back up to his feet. You know what I mean?
Spinaroonie?
Yeah, the spinneroonie. I mean, you know. So yeah, you could see. I think that that was the difference, was that he had incorporated different styles, and he was a little bit younger.
Definitely. More athletic for sure. There's no doubt about that. I mean, he's doing flips off the top rope, the Harlem Hangover, and the Spinaroonie. I mean, he was a great, great athlete, tremendous.
Yeah.
Stevie more the muscle guy. He was more
Right.
the tough guy.
Right. Right.
When you guys start with the NWO, do they have any, you know, not to say anything negative, but do they have any problems with the NWO, or are they loving the NWO coming in? What was their thoughts on starting that angle?
No, they had no problems. Kevin's from Detroit. He's a street kid. You can say what you want about the NWO, who was the leader. Kevin was the leader. Kevin's from Detroit. He got along well with everybody, especially kids, guys from the neighborhood. And the Heat they knew that they had a place there, and they were going to be an intricate part of the NWO. They had to wrestle tag teams. So why wouldn't you want to wrestle Harlem Heat?
Absolutely, and they did. Hall and Nash
Yeah.
end up fighting him at Havoc '96. Yeah, they of course he get the loss, but still good match.
Right. Right.
It's interesting putting Hall and Nash in the tag team division too, because you have two huge names, and that immediately makes the tag division kind of like a main event.
It certainly did. And it also kept that those guys were the outsiders. They were together when the day they walked in till everything kind of went hot haywire. The wolf pack, red and black, black and white, green or yellow, purple and
Hmm.
black, Latino, blue world order, zebras forever,
When did you first think it was okay to split up Harlem Heat? I mean, kind of seems like '98 is really Booker T's breakout, the feud with Benoit, the TV title run, and everything. When did you kind of figure he needed to be on his own?
I think, one of the things that I think fans are crying out for, and you and I talked about it last week, something new. Wrestling fans like things that are new. And if you pull them apart, when you put them back together, it's whoa, we're going to see it. This may be the last time we'll see them together. I mean, there's always that. I remember one time seeing a tape where Hogan and Piper, this is when, they were having their run in New York at the very beginning. And a couple of house shows, they tagged them together. And the people popped when they tagged one another. It was almost like, hey, I may hate you, but we're going to work through this thing tonight. We'll continue on later on. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And it was like, well, for the people that night, I think was, we may never see this again. And I think that's what you and I have talked about to nausea. Something has to be new.
And did you think when you split them up, obviously Stevie eventually will join the NWO and do the black and white thing, and that was like you said before, if you put the T-shirt on the guy, he's going to be in the NWO, he's going to be over, like big mistake there. But did you think like, okay, Booker is definitely going to be in line for a bigger push?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I mean, it was Booker's time to shine, and he did.
What did you think about him singles versus tag team? Did you think he was better singles just overall or equally as good?
I think he was equally as good, JP. I really do. I think he was equally as good, and that's a hard thing to be. You know what I mean? I don't think people, when they talk about the Four Horsemen, they talk about Tully and Arn, and that's what they think about that tag team. But both Tully and Arn were great single wrestlers, and
Yeah.
that's hard to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a hard thing to do. But those guys, like I said, they were way ahead of their time.
And we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I didn't want to skip over it, but when at Spring Stampede '97, when Booker T says that line, Hulk Hogan, we're coming for you, and that whole thing. Did they get in any sort of like political trouble? Anything backstage? Did Hogan say anything to him when they said that? Obviously, big mistake by Booker T saying the N word and kind of threatening Hogan in that way, but it was supposed to be a part of the storyline. So, any heat or anything for them?
It was one of those things where uh, you're in a room and it's these elegant dining room, and there's four couples, and someone cuts this loud fart, and nobody notices it. You know what I mean? Everybody kind of looks at one another. Did you dealt it? Did you dealt it? But nobody says anything. That's what that thing was like to me. It was like, oh, just don't say anything.
Man, if you watch it, Sherry's reaction, you could tell she's like, "Oh boy."
Yeah,
Stevie like no sells it. He is so focused. He doesn't even I don't even know
I
like
don't
what was
think he
going through
heard
his
it.
mind.
I don't think he heard it. Yeah,
He was just stone faced from it. And then he continues on like we're gonna win this thing, or he gets right back into the storyline of it. But it's just funny. But you could tell Sherry's like, oh, like she doesn't know what to do, or like she doesn't know how to react. It's great.
right, right. She was great.
But nobody, obviously nobody got in trouble, right, for it?
Nobody got in trouble for it. Like I said, it's almost like, oh, nobody heard it. Nobody heard that. Don't say it. Forget it. Didn't happen. You know.
Funny, funny stuff. And obviously, it lives on in infamy. 20 plus years later, everyone still plays it on YouTube, and they always have everybody talking about it. Years later, of course, fans love it.
Yeah, yeah.
So when Harlem Heat is kind of going along, they actually, I guess, really, it wouldn't be under you more so. It might have been more under Russo. They bring in Midnight and they try to do a little dissension with the Harlem Heat. And they have Harlem Heat 2000. They bring Ahmed Johnson in as Big T. What do you like? What did you kind of think about all that? Do you think that was like a little too much, and Harlem Heat didn't really need all that extra stuff?
That we all have difference of opinion, and I hate to criticize anybody, but I tell you the story about I got a boat, and I never, I never take it to the mechanic until it starts snoring at me, and I take it to the mechanic, and I come out and I leave this place on the boat. I get about halfway home, and the boat dies. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It didn't
Well
need
said.
to be fixed.
Well said. It's a weird thing, especially Ahmed Johnson was really out of shape at that point. They
Uh,
brought him in
yeah, yeah. I mean, he wasn't the Ahmed Johnson that I remember, right? Or you remember?
not even close.
No.
What did you think about, like, just in general, putting Ahmed Johnson with them? Did you think like, okay, I know they know each other from Global and they have a history together, but like, it's not. I know you said like not needed, but do you think like just storyline wise, it even kind of makes sense to do that? Like, or just grasping at straws there?
At that time, I was home fishing.
Hmm.
I wasn't kind of paying attention to it because it was got to me. It's again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But that's just my philosophy. That doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean you're right. If you want to change something, go ahead and try it. But if it doesn't work, you got to pull the plug quickly.
Yes.
I always say, like, if you got a wrestling spot, if it doesn't get over the first time, try it the second time. And if it doesn't get over the third time, shit can it. Never use it again.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. With Booker T, he'll be a six-time television champion. Stevie Ray only a one-time. Obviously, he'd become a U.S. champion, Booker, and he'd be five-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion. Is that kind of seem about right? That Stevie never kind of broke into that upper tier, and that Booker T kind of rose well above him, or you think maybe Stevie could have had a run, or maybe even been U.S. champ or something?
I think Stevie could. That's a great point. I was going to say that. I think it would have been great if Booker was the world champion and Stevie was the U.S. champion, and somebody tried to goad them into wrestling each other. I hate that. I hate brothers wrestling brothers. And them saying, whoever was the mastermind behind them trying to goad them into wrestling each other, they turn and they come back as a tag team that night against the guys team that tried to goad them in. The world champion, the U.S. champion against the tag team champions, winner take all. To me, that would draw.
Feel like when they did have the, I guess it was really under Russo's era, but they did kind of have that feud, and I was like, I don't know, it's like when Hall and Nash feuded. It's like, and obviously they're not even brothers, but it's like guys that are that close, Booker T and Stevie, you don't want to see them feuding, even if maybe they may disagree. You still don't want to see them wrestle.
No, no. Uh, the only time I've ever seen a baby face turn heel that made sense to me, that's been a super baby face, was when Dusty turned to the NWO because of the backstory with the company and the backstory with Scott Hall. I mean, they did it for Austin, right? Didn't they do it to Goldberg?
Yep,
People chased him out of the ring. The guy that was saying, "Who's next?"
yep. Booker T once chased him out of the ring after
Yeah,
he beat him on Nitro. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, really? So the rest of it was Dallas. It was all a dream. Do you remember the
yep.
Dallas program?
Yeah.
She comes out of the
She wakes
shower.
up and he's in the shower. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Was that what the Goldberg run was? Just a dream? Was that
Yep.
what Stone Cold was? Just a dream? There are things you don't go to Yankee Stadium and change Babe Ruth's number 3 to 47. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There
Yep.
are things that should be left alone. Uh, you know who Rodriguez is, the cartoonist?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
One of the funniest things I ever saw in my life. It's supposed to be in a primitive village somewhere, and there's this stone carving saying nothing, and all these people are bowing down to it. And one of the people look at the other primitive guy and says, "Is nothing sacred?" Like he's asking, "Is in wrestling nothing is sacred?"
Hmm.
I mean,
Yep.
if there's a turn like Hogan's turn was, that made sense because it just put another layer on that this was a real invasion. If we had turned Hulk Hogan with no NWO, that wouldn't have worked.
Yep. I agree. With Harlem Heat, obviously Booker T, like we said, became the big star of the duo. They eventually have a little bit of a rekindling. I guess in their personal life, they had a little bit of a falling out, but they rekindled. Um, I think it was somewhere around 2014, 2015. I know ROW, which is Booker T's promotion, Reality of Wrestling down in Houston, they were actually tag champs at one time. Those are the last match that they had together, was in February of 2015. It's one of those things where sometimes brothers fight, right? I mean, sometimes they have a falling out.
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. I mean, like I said, I was the youngest of three boys, and there were punches thrown every Saturday afternoon. In fact, my father got into the fray. Usually, I pull up a chair and watch, watch the Gillette Cavalcade of Sports, brought to you by the Sullivan family. So I mean, yeah, but if it's okay to beat up your brother, but if like my older brother used to, my middle brother used to beat the shit out of me all the time. But if someone touched me, he was on them. It was okay for him to beat me up, but not anybody else when I was a kid.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And he certainly wasn't going to charge money to have people pay to see him beat me up. You know what I mean? That's why I never liked that.
Yep, agree. And with them, it's great to see them get acknowledged by the WWE. So Booker T first goes into the Hall of Fame, and Stevie does the induction speech in New York City at MSG. Stevie did an awesome job. You really got to see his personality. He was also great as a commentator too, where you kind of saw his personality. Just one of those things where it's like, wow, Stevie, he really kind of impressed everybody that night. But it's awesome to see eventually Harlem Heat go in the Hall of Fame together, and WWE recognizing the greatness that is Harlem Heat as a tag team.
And I'm glad that happened. Stevie deserves to be honored just like his brother.
Were you surprised that WWE put them in the Hall of Fame? Just because sometimes they're so weird where they only like their guys, you know?
Yeah, I was, but Harlem Heat, like I said, broke barriers quickly, and they deserve to get in, not just on what they did as performers, but how they sped up the business.
Booker T is one of those guys that obviously two-time WWE Hall of Famer. He's finally getting his due as one of the all-time greats. And now A&E is going to have a biography on him, a part of a series of 8 guys that started with Austin, and I think it ends with Brett. But it's like 8 huge names, so it's awesome to see him lumped in with those great guys.
Yes, it is. And he should be. He should be. He should be. He was one of the most talented guys I ever saw in 50 years. Not saying something.
What do you think is the lasting legacy of the Harlem Heat as a tag team?
that they set the standard along with the Four Horsemen of tag team wrestling at that era.
As far as the Harlem Heat is concerned, where do you rank them in tag team history? Like top 10, or where do you put them?
Oh yeah, yeah, they're a top 10. I never like to say slot a guy 10, 9, 8 because different eras. You know what I mean? To me,
Yep.
the greatest worker I ever saw is either Ray Stevens or Shawn Michaels, but that was 2 different eras. It's kind of hard to go against the Four Horsemen, but then if you look at it, Stevie Ray, it's neck and neck. So, hey, they both teams deserve to be on the tag team Mount Rushmore.
No doubt about it. They're great. WCW, we put them in the top 2, right? Say them and the Steiner brothers, and maybe
Yeah,
them top 1.
yeah, yeah. I give it to them. 1. Steiners 2.
Nice.
Yeah.
Gotta love the Harlem Heat. 10-time WCW World Tag Team Champion. Says a lot.
Yes, it does.
Carried the tag division.
For a long time. Longevity means something, especially in baseball, right, John?
Oh yeah. Yes.
So I always equate things, sometimes you do too, to baseball.
Hmm.
You know?
No doubt about it.
Yeah. One of the greatest lines I heard, someone was knocking Nash's ability, and he said, the only guy to get elected unanimously to the Baseball Hall of Fame had 1 pitch.
Yep. Mariano Rivera. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't even think I know they were talking about Jeter. Jeter wasn't
No,
unanimous, right? No, right?
no, except I think it was 97 or 98. He didn't quite get it.
How wasn't Babe Ruth unanimous? That's kind of a weird one. Or
Because
Ted Williams.
he was in the first class, and I don't think they thought the Hall of Fame was going to be what it was going to be, right? Wasn't the Ty Cobb Trust Speaker, Babe Ruth, Walter Johnson, Cy Young. I think there was like 8. I don't think they think it was going to be the biggest, but the great line I heard about how reporters are all full of shit. How do you not vote for Willie Mays or Ted Williams unanimously?
Yep.
It's because you're got a problem with them personally.
Yeah, or Hank Aaron. I mean, it's so many guys like, wait, how is he not unanimous?
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love that Rivera was. I mean, somehow, some way, he broke the mold. I love that.
Yeah. Let me ask you something while we're on the Hall of Fame. You think Ortiz will go in first ballot?
Ooh, I don't know because of the steroid thing. It seems like they won't vote for him right away.
What he did with against the Yankees, he deserves to go in just for that. But you want to hear my theory on this?
Yes.
They had to put in who's the batting, the designated hitter trophy named after the guy from Seattle.
Edgar Martinez.
Edgar didn't get in until just a few years ago, right?
Right.
I think they wanted to get Edgar in first, and because I think Ortiz is going to get in because it wasn't last year the commissioner said that test was bull. He tried to cover up. Remember that one 2 years
Yeah,
ago?
but it was weird. Remember his name did come out in that report, and then Manny Ramirez too, and they were on the same team together.
Yeah.
Kind of seemed a little shady.
Yeah. But I think that where I'm going with this, I think like anything else, they have favorites, right? And he is Big Papi. So I think they came out and said, well, that his name really wasn't on the report. Well, how did it 10 years prior to that you said it was on it, now it's not? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think
Yep.
they're setting him up to him, and especially after he got shot. So
It was funny, like the 2 big names from the report was like A-Rod and him, and they made sure that they both looked bad announcing that, and nobody else was really named. Really, I mean, a couple guys, but those were the main ones.
Yeah, yeah,
And obviously, A-Rod got popped a few times after that, but it's neither here nor there for A-Rod. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. This is Taskmaster Talks. We'll see you right back here next week. See you then, folks.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.